So, not too long ago, the second season of the widely popular anime series Dandan just reached its conclusion. Anime in general has become much more popular in the last 5 years or so, with it hitting much more of a mainstream audience than it really used to. With anime previously being viewed as a very niche, nerdy art form in what feels like a very long time ago now, it's cool to see it make a huge comeback and be popular with everyone. Heck, even around the same time Dandan finished up its second season, the Demon Slayer movie debuted and easily became one of the highest grossing films of this year. It really feels like anime is here to stay, and that's an awesome thing. But at the same time, seeing anime become one of the most popular art forms in the world has had a lot of people reflecting on where it got started to begin with. Starting out, anime wasn't even something that most people took seriously as an art form in the West, with most mainstream audiences likely only being familiar with things such as Speed Racer in passing and mostly dismissing them as inferior to American cartoons. But it wasn't until 1988 with the release of Akira, and 7 years after that with the release of Ghost in the Shell in 1995, that anime started to show its ability to be seen as a deeper, more mature art form than most people had been giving it credit for at the time. And it wasn't really until the 2010s, and even more so in the 2020s, that anime ever became something truly seen as cool. So you might be wondering, where exactly was the audience before that? Well, funny enough, long before anime truly took off, throughout the 90s and 2000s, a lot of people who enjoyed anime as it was continuing to grow in the cultural conscience were actually those on the autism spectrum, or with some other form of neurodivergency. For the longest time, throughout the 90s and 2000s, liking anime was not considered something that was cool in the way that sports or video games were considered cool by the general public. If you said you liked anime, you would likely be the subject of bullying back then, or have a hard time finding people to relate to with that interest. Which, in a lot of ways, made it feel all the more special when you actually did find someone who shared that interest with you and also loved anime, even though that could definitely be a rarity back then. It allowed people to feel like they could take pride in having an interest in anime rather than feeling like they had to hide that from the world. And funny enough, it's a lot of these kinds of people, although not always, that would often turn out to be neurodivergent, whether they had been previously diagnosed or ended up getting diagnosed a lot later in life after anime had been pushed into the mainstream. Because of this, and because of the general nicheness of anime at the time, it often ended up being a form of escapism for neurodivergent people at the time, and often a way they would be able to feel seen and sometimes be able to meet others just like them. Autism and anime have been somewhat intertwined quite a bit since the medium was still in relative obscurity, and while anime has become far bigger and appeals to a much bigger demographic than it ever did before, a lot of autistic people that grew up watching anime while it was still niche still have fond memories of it and remember how it allowed them to feel seen in a way they might not have gotten elsewhere. And perhaps one of the biggest reasons for this is actually due to the number of autistic coded characters that the medium of anime actually has within it, which helps shape an entire generation of autistic people and help them really feel seen. Now, when I say an autistic coded character, I don't mean a character who is explicitly stated as autistic, since none of the people we're going to talk about today have that. I more so mean a character who might have traits or quirks that they actively display that might also be traits that an autistic person has as well oftentimes. This is often a thing that autistic people like seeing a lot in a character, since it allows them to feel represented and seen in a way that they might not get elsewhere, since oftentimes explicitly stated autistic characters end up not being good representation whatsoever. Two very infamous examples of this are the films Music and The Unbreakable Boy, which do have autistic characters in them, but they're treated more like props to lift the neurotypical characters in those films up. They don't actually have their own character whatsoever, and they're not really fleshed out, and as a result, autistic people tend not to resonate with them since they just exist as a stool for the neurotypical people in the film to stand on. And oftentimes, that's why autistic people relate more to autistic coded characters than characters that are actually explicitly stated to be autistic in media. Oftentimes, they actually end up being a much more accurate representation of autism overall. So today, I want to look at some notable autistic coded characters in anime, talk about why they really resonate with autistic people a lot more than explicitly stated autistic characters, and talk about why anime in general really resonates with autistic people overall. I'm also bringing some special guests onto today's video, so you'll hear their stories pretty shortly as well. I thought they brought some really insightful things to say overall, so I hope you enjoy hearing them speak later. To start, let's look at the character Okabe Rintaro, who's the main character in the anime Steins Gate, and a very highly autistic coded character that a lot of people relate to. In the context of the show, Okabe is a self-proclaimed mad scientist who accidentally discovers time travel and also discovers the consequences of playing God and messing around with time. At the start of the show, he comes off as a rather delusional, very brash and outspoken person who goes goes on long tangents and rants about being a mad scientist and how the organization CERN is after him. He has a very different way of interacting with the world socially than a neurotypical person would, and he struggles with or just doesn't seem interested in typical social convention. For him, it seems he's gotten used to his way of communicating being acting like a mad scientist around other people. This, of course, comes to the annoyance of a lot of people, but there are people who genuinely do stick by him since they know he's not actually like this, that being his friends Mayuri and Daru. I think one of the most interesting things about him acting like a mad scientist within this show, however, is that it's basically just a mask for him. Throughout the show, it's shown that Okabe didn't have many friends growing up outside of one, Mayuri, and this, combined with his fear of losing Mayuri once her grandmother died, caused him to start masking his true self and put on this eccentric mad scientist persona. In a lot of ways, he's now masked so much that he can't actually interact with people any other way, which is a very common thing for autistic people overall. Sometimes they get so used to masking around other people that it's really the only way they can actually interact with others in general. Oftentimes, masking too much can be an unhealthy thing for an autistic person, and it usually takes a lot of retraining to learn to cut back on that habit for an autistic person overall. This is shown really well with Okabe masking a lot of who he really is at the start of Steins Gate, with the viewer watching the show only being shown him interacting with others while putting on the mad scientist persona that he uses to draw attention. But as the show goes on, and as we learn more about Okabe and also see new people enter his life, namely Kirisu Makase, who is the main female lead of the show, we slowly see him start to drop the mask and not feel like he constantly has to put up this facade to be noticed by people anymore. Because for the first time in his life, he finally has people who just love him for being him. It's a really beautiful thing to see represented in this show in general. A lot of the times, it can be very, very hard for autistic people to feel like they fit in, and oftentimes that is why they tend to mask themselves. So it feels all the more special when you do find those people who actually get you and just like you for being you, and that's something that's really well represented in Steins Gate. I think another thing that causes a lot of autistic people to really relate to Okabe is his major hyperfixations that he very clearly displays. He has a major hyperfixation on science, which is part of the reason he masks as a mad scientist to begin with. Steins Gate is a very hard science fiction show, meaning it draws from a lot of real science in order to craft its story. And funny enough, it's through Okabe's hyperfixations and ramblings about science that we actually, as the audience, learn a lot about the real world science that's being implemented in this show. I think this is a really cool way that the show actually educates its audience on the scientific rules of the show and its world building overall, while still allowing Okabe to be his normal autistic self and hyperfixate on things that he likes. It feels like a very natural representation of a hyperfixation, and it's also used as a plot device too. In general, if you haven't seen Steins Gate, please go watch it. It is very much one of the most autistic shows out there, and honestly has some of the best storytelling just in general that I've seen in any show. And for me at least, it's also my personal favorite anime. Another anime character that a lot of people tend to see as autistic coded that's also really popular is none other than Yor Forger from Spy Family. Right away, even in the first episode of the show that she appears in, Yor already shows a lot of different autistic coded traits just in general. In the first episode alone, we see a lot of examples of Yor failing to recognize sarcasm and also taking things way too literally oftentimes that people tell her in general. This especially is a very common trait of autism overall, taking things very literally. Now, obviously with autism being a spectrum, it doesn't necessarily affect every autistic person, but it can be a very common trait overall. Even just in the first episode of the show, she's told to do something by one of her coworkers as sort of a mean-spirited joke, but she doesn't really get it at all.
Doesn't it creep you out too? Huh? The section chief's coffee? Blow snot in it.
Do you think snot would make it taste better or something?
You know, I really gotta give you credit, girl. You're definitely one of a kind.
And I think the nice thing about something like Spy Family is that it doesn't show Yor's inability to read social situations or sarcasm as a weakness or something that makes her less of a person by any means. She's still a very competent, very loving, very strong woman throughout the entirety of the show. She's a powerful assassin who's able to take down her enemies with ease, but also a very loving and very loyal wife and mother to both Lloyd and Anya. I think another thing that a lot of autistic people tend to resonate with is a very strong sense of justice and a really strong sense of loyalty as well. Just like any autistic person, however, she's not always sure about the best or most conventional way to show this. There are a lot of autistic people out there that are very caring people, but they're just not always aware of the most socially acceptable, neurotypical way of showing that. And as a result, sometimes their actions can be misinterpreted, and that does happen a lot with Yor in this show. I think the thing that's inspiring about her, though, is that she doesn't let something like this get her down at all, and she just keeps being her loyal, amazing self. Even when she feels like the world might not totally understand her, she does know she has people people that truly love her for just who she is, like Lloyd and Anya. Similar to how it worked with Okabe, this is something that really allows her to be her true self and not feel like she always has to mask around people, and also just helps her feel accepted in general. Also, just like most people on the spectrum, she has moments where she very clearly gets overstimulated, oftentimes when she thinks Lloyd or Anya might uncover her secret as an assassin. It's moments like these where she'll emotionally shut down or start to break down, and it's actually a surprisingly accurate representation of autistic overstimulation overall. Yor has absolutely become one of the most beloved waifus in anime recently, and also she's just one of the best autistic coded characters in anime recently as well. There's a reason a lot of autistic people tend to see themselves in her, and I'm honestly glad a character like Yor exists, since it allows autistic people to really have something to resonate with. So now that I've talked about how both Okabe and Yor Forger are autistic coded characters, I'm gonna turn it over to some of my creator friends here. These are fellow neurodivergent creator friends of mine who are gonna tell you about some of the anime characters that they felt seen by in the past. They had a lot of really wonderful stories to share here, so I hope you're able to take something away from what they say, or maybe learn something new as well. Who knows, maybe what they say will have you wanting to check out one of these anime that they discuss here. But without further ado, let's get into exactly what they had to say.
Hi everybody, my name is Dejavudea, the Millennial Magical Girl VTuber. I'm a full-time streamer over on Twitch, and I am diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, among other spicy brain things. We play a variety of games over on Twitch, but we have a big focus on community and bringing people together. Noah invited me to talk about a few things today with my experience with autism and media, including autism. I think anyone who has seen any of the Apothecary Diaries can confidently say that Mao Mao, the protagonist, is very autistic coded. Just to highlight a few before we really get into it, she's got very special interests that are obvious from episode 1. She needs alone time because she often gets overstimulated. She's very stoic and doesn't often express herself with her facial expressions, and people tend to not understand her because of that. She needs physical space. She doesn't really like being touched, and that overstimulates her, as well as really just not understanding people's motivations and feelings, and she often has a self-insert narration of her saying, boy, like, I don't understand, like, why would they do that? And it's just very obvious. One of the most entertaining and relatable dynamics that Mao Mao has is with the other protagonist character, Jinshi. I don't know exactly where the relationship with those two is going because I don't read ahead of the manga, but it's very much Jinshi shows affection and Mao Mao doesn't know how to reciprocate. Which I think, whether it be physical or emotional or romantic, not understanding the social cues of affection is very autistic coded. Mao Mao's very obvious hyperfixation is poisons and herbs, and as you can tell by the title of the anime Apothecary Diaries, she is an apothecary, and the whole sort of narrative of the anime revolves around Mao Mao's special interests with other things, you know, dabbling here and there with relationships with other characters. Watching Apothecary Diaries, I didn't even put it together at first why I really enjoyed it. It wasn't until my partner said, wow, I think Mao Mao is super autistic coded, and I said, whoa! You're so right. And this Apothecary Diaries is actually one of my comfort animes, which for me, with ADHD as well as autism, I don't often go back and watch media again, but I've watched Apothecary Diaries, I want to say like 3 times now, so it's a really, really great show, and I highly recommend it.
Hi, my name is Yewfiee, and I make content on YouTube and Twitch under the name Yewfiee. I recently realized I have ADHD and started getting treatment for it, and it's made a lot of things about myself make a lot more sense. Noah asked me to be a part of this video and talk about a character I related to growing up, and I think the one I had the strongest connection with was Misuzu Cameo from Air. Misuzu is considered a quote-unquote weird girl. She's really immature, with a fixation on dinosaurs, and she says "gow" frequently, which is the sound a dinosaur would make. She's scolded for this by her aunt Haruko, who wants her to be more quote-unquote normal. Misuzu is also clumsy and very easily distracted mid-conversation, coming across as an airhead to those around her. She has difficulty getting her homework done and often skips classes. She's also incredibly friendly with the right people, constantly pestering them to spend time together, but around her peers seems to get a little nervous. The thing about Misuzu I relate to the most strongly is her tendency to get distracted in conversations and to have difficulty finishing her schoolwork. Before I realized I had ADHD, I thought I was just stupid or an airhead who couldn't follow a conversation or get anything done. Of course, that's not true. It turns out I just have issues with attention and focus because of ADHD, but I didn't know that for a long time. To me, it seems like MissFushi's character was written with ADHD in mind, and I related and still relate to her a lot. MissFushi will relentlessly pester her only friend Yukito to play games with her and spend time with her, despite him not always wanting to. When she knows she wants to do something, she's incredibly persistent, but not only that, she's also just really lonely. When I was younger, I remember becoming really fixated on a dice game called Farkle, and I would constantly ask my family to play with me until they got so sick of it, they stopped saying yes. I also had a tendency to bother my friends to do things they weren't really interested in because I couldn't stop thinking about how much I wanted to do them to the point it consumed my entire thoughts for sometimes days. And I was also really lonely too. I was really quiet until I got comfortable enough with someone, and so back then I was seen as weird and awkward. Because of this, I had a lot of trouble making friends, so I found a lot of comfort in MissFushi's character and her loneliness, as well as the perception others had of her for being weird. The show and MissFushi were really important to me in high school, so she was the first character that came to mind when Noah asked me to be a part of this video. It's a really good show, but also really sad, so maybe not for everyone. But even if it made me cry, I'm glad it was there to make me feel not so alone.
Hi guys, my name is Angel Carboni. I am a professional model and hobbyist cosplayer, friend of Noah's as well, many titles, and I am neurodivergent, self-diagnosed, would like to get proper diagnosis, but that's expensive, so yay America. My favorite character, who I believe is also neurodivergent, is Cece from Code Geass. If you're unfamiliar with Code Geass, it is a very like action, mecha, like war-ish, like I say war-ish, there is like a literal war going on in the show. And it's like a very cool anime. Even like as a shonen, it's not very shonen-esque. I would even say it's a little bit more mature than shonen, because shonen is targeted towards more of a younger like male audience. It does feel a bit more teen era. But Cece is one of the main characters in the show. She has the green hair and everything. She is by title I think a witch, but basically she's this like extraterrestrial like alien being, and she bestows like magical powers to the other main character, whose name is Lelouch. This all happens in the first episode. This is very spoiler free. And so Cece, being an alien, is kind of like being neurodivergent, not to make the easy comparison there, but I feel like a lot of times as a neurodivergent person, I feel very like out of place or out of context sometimes in social circles. I feel like it's really easy to be like in a room and trying really hard to read a room and like understand things, and so like Cece throughout the show, she's like kind of learning how to be like a person and also just like function and like, you know, listen to like what Lelouch says or like try to do the right thing and things like that. Another thing that I think is really relatable to me is that she loves pizza. She loves pizza so much that she orders enough pizza that she gets sent a promotional cheese plushie named Cheese-kun. And I'm actually going to grab a item that I made for my Cece cosplay, which is my very own Cheese-kun plushie that I made myself. But I think that really marks her as a neurodivergent person. She found a safe food. If you aren't familiar with the concept of a safe food, it is a food that typically a neurodivergent person may have, that they deem is something safe. Like, this is a food that they are comfortable with, they know is good, they know tastes good, so that is a safe food for them. Like, they don't have to worry about trying to figure out what other food to eat, because like new food is scary and stuff like that. And so like for me, I actually do enjoy eating a lot of different foods, but I do have a lot of safe foods as well. Like, as much as I love cooking and exploring food, I find a lot of comfort in my comfort foods, in my safe foods. And so like Cece, I just think that concept is really relatable as a neurodivergent person. Other parts of her character are very relatable too. I think she is very 0 or 100. There are a lot of points in the show, again, I'll try to be as spoiler free as possible, but there are a lot of points in the show where she has to kind of play the bad guy. And so to me, what that feels like is when us as like neurodivergents, we have to kind of, you know, turn on like serious mode, and like once serious mode is on, like we can't really turn it off, you know? And it's very 0 or 100 with like how we like handle things, or like how emotions feel like if something upsets like CC or upsets me, like, you know, we're just upset until it's like resolved. And so I just feel like CC really embodies like how we function as like neurodivergent people, because it's a very easy comparison again, but she's like an alien. She doesn't know how to really act as a person, and I feel like as a neurodivergent person, it's hard for me to also act like as a person. So yeah, I would highly recommend watching Code Geass in general. It's a really great anime, and I also really love CC's character. And you also get to see Cheese-kun at some point. Cheese-kun is a very cool plushie. I also got this Cheese-kun plushie that I made signed by the Japanese voice actress Yukana. Her signature's upside down because I had her write it the other way. But she wrote my name in Japanese too, which I think is really cool. So it says Tu Tenshi, because in Japanese, angel is Tenshi. And so it says Tu Tenshi, and then she did her little Yukana signature, and I think it's really cute. Anyway, that's my flex. Bye!
Hello to my beautiful friends. My name is MissFushi. When Noah asked me to initially be a part of this video, I knew as soon as he asked that I wanted to talk about Kino from Kino's Journey, or Kino no Tabi as it's called in Japan. I'm going to use they to refer to Kino as a character because their sex and gender is actually a big part of the story and kind of a spoiler. And if you want to watch this anime, I want to keep as much hidden from you as possible. But the basic gist of the story is Kino travels to all of these different fantastical countries on a talking motorcycle who's basically their best friend. They only stay for about 3 days and 2 nights at every new place that they go, and that's kind of like Kino's special rule that they have for themselves. Some of the countries are peaceful and beautiful with unique technologies and people, while others are really, really dark, lonely, and horrifying, and have some of the most brutal aspects of humanity that you could possibly imagine. It's not really an anime for the weak of heart or stomach, but I think that's why I like it so much. The world is not beautiful, and therefore it is a pretty important quote that has to do with it. What I really love about Kino as a character is their strength and their heart. They travel the entire world that they exist in with nobody but a talking bike, so it's almost like they're basically alone. And they have to defend themselves against all of these mental and physical struggles that they come into contact with. And honestly, it's really, really scary, especially since they're so small. The idea of doing that terrifies me, and yet Kino manages to do it. I know the first time I saw the anime, I was quite young, and so I felt really connected to Kino as a character who was also young and teeny. The more I learned about Kino and their motivation for their journey, the more I felt that connection grow. They're a person who's lost, yet they're not seeking to settle down anywhere. No matter where they go, no matter how nice the places they travel to are, or how nice the people are, they're like, no, I have to keep going. I kind of feel like I feel that way sometimes. Almost like I'm lost and trying to find my purpose, just like Kino is. I feel like all of us are on a journey at the end of the day, through our lives. I mean, that's what life is. It's a journey. And you can do whatever you want on it, whether it's to have certain goals like making a lot of money, being really happy, starting a family, reaching after a dream or a goal. Like, we're all on our own personal journeys, just like Kino is. And no matter what beauty you see in the world, there's always going to be this darkness. And you have to decide if you're going to let the darkness take you and consume you, or if you're going to rise above it and continue your journey and looking for your source of happiness. Life's a journey for all of us. You can keep your chin up and you can get back on your talking bike and you can keep rolling, just like Kino does. And that's kind of how I want to live my life. If you're interested in anime that deals with big introspection and you can handle some really tough subject matter, I really recommend the first anime of Kino's journey. Thank you.
Overall, anime really is a medium that has blown up exponentially in the last few years. But it really does seem like a lot of the people that truly latched onto it when it was still niche were neurodivergent people. And it's really because anime just has that knack of being able to speak to neurodivergency that a lot of other mediums of art just can't really do. There's just something consistently so profound and deeply resonating about the best anime that manages to connect directly to neurodivergent people when they often didn't have another way to feel seen. And it's because of that, a lot of neurodivergent people like myself really value anime, and especially how it helped them in their formative years feel seen in a way that they really couldn't get otherwise. I'm honestly really glad anime has so much positive neurodivergent rep overall, and I hope it's something that continues, even if it is unintentional most likely. It's a medium that really has given a lot of people a way to feel seen, and I think that's just something really powerful and beautiful overall. And as the medium itself continues to grow and balloon in popularity, I hope that's something that other people are able to get for themselves as well. And I hope there's an anime that's able to speak to you as well, if you're someone like myself. But what do you think? Do you think anime is good at speaking to neurodivergency? And do you have a favorite anime overall? Let me know in the comments below. Regardless, thank you so much for watching this video and hope you enjoyed it or learned something new from it. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a like and also consider subscribing as well. I do a lot of content revolving around film and animation overall, so if you like this video, you'll probably like the other videos I have planned as well. If there's a particular topic you think I should cover in a video, be sure to comment down below and tell me what it is. I always love hearing people's insight on what I should cover next on the channel. If you'd like to follow me on all my socials as well, those are linked down below too: Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, all the things. I'm also on Letterboxd, so if you'd like to see very in-depth written film reviews from me, you can check that out down below as well, linked in the description. Special thanks to my patrons and YouTube members who are listed on the screen here for pitching in at the extra monetary support. I appreciate y'all doing that to keep me doing what I do here. Patrons and YouTube members get access to my Discord and also get to pick things for me to react to. Thank you for coming to the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it or learned something new from it. But for now, I've been Otterly Noah, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye!